Hi there, everybody. I am Amanda with the Activated Earth, and this is the Activated Earth Summit. And I am here with David Shaw, who is a permaculturist, among other things. And I am going to read his bio so that we know all these details. There are many details here, lots of interesting stuff about David. So David is a whole systems designer, a naturalist, a farmer, an educator, and a musician. His focus is building connections with ourselves, with each other, and with nature. He directs Santa Cruz Permaculture, a company dedicated to amplifying regenerative solutions through action, learning, intentional community development, and land stewardship. He also coordinates the Right Livelihood College at UCSC, a network for scaling up courageous solutions to the root causes of global problems. Sounds perfect. David completed the apprenticeship in ecological horticulture at the UCSC Center for Agroecology and Sustainable Food Systems and holds a master's degree in integrative eco-social design from Gaia University. Right now, he is a PhD student in the UCSC Environmental Studies program, researching successful transnational alternative policy groups and large-scale ecosystem regeneration solutions. You're moving into some interesting stuff. So there's one more paragraph. David is also active in the Global World Cafe community, a group dedicated to hosting intergenerational dialogue on questions that matter. In order to meet the challenges of today, he is creating an urban farm and intergenerational learning center that fosters hands-on farm and wilderness skills, cultural competence, social entrepreneurship, and collective action. It's a good thing I like to read. And there's a lot of big words in there. So is there anything else about you, David?
No, I think you got it all.
I think you got it covered. So the reason why I invited you was because I felt like the permaculture perspective really needed to be represented here. And that perspective can shift amongst teachers and educators and practitioners of permaculture. And what I would love for you to give us right from the get-go is your definition of permaculture for people that don't know what permaculture is.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. First, just thank you. It's great to stay in touch with you so many years later after our permaculture class together.
Yeah.
Here's a couple definitions just to get us started. I like this one, which is a longer definition, kind of based on Toby Hemingway's definition, the late great permaculture author of Gaia's Garden. And I typically define permaculture as an ethically based whole systems design approach that uses concepts, principles, and methods derived from ecosystems, nature-connected communities, and other time-tested systems to create human settlements and institutions. That's long. It's kind of an academic definition. There's a few shorter ones. I don't know where this one came from, but saving the planet while throwing a better party. I like that one. And then there's this other one by Patrick Whitefield, The Art of Designing Beneficial Relationships. So it's a very relational, system, if you will. I think it's important to also mention that, it's a portmanteau of these words, permanent and culture, permanent and agriculture. And so, the word came into being, so to speak, in the late 70s with Bill Mollison and David Holmgren, but it's important to say that they didn't really invent it, if you know what I mean. It's rather that they identified patterns and principles and methods that already existed and then created a design framework based on what they observed.
Yeah, definitely. It's an idea that's been around that didn't really have a word attached to it. And
Penny Livingston likes to say permaculture is the cutting edge of a 10,000-year-old technology. So, many definitions.
Yeah. So when you and I talked before we agreed to have you on here, something came up that that really spoke to me that I'm now curious about, and that is, um, I had mentioned social permaculture, and you said that you don't speak on it, that you are it. You are being social permaculture, and social permaculture aside, as part of the greater picture of permaculture, um, I see you living permaculture. You are being permaculture, living with others, growing your own food, offering education, honoring the permaculture tenets, which are, does it provide for the earth? Does it provide for the people? Is there a surplus to give back? Those tenets. So what I'm curious about is, like, how did this happen that you and permaculture came together? Like, did it find you because you are permaculture, or did you find it? And then in embodying it and, giving a word to it, what did that do to change your life?
Wow. Well, thank you. I try to be humble. And so to say, I am permaculture, I am social permaculture, that thought hasn't quite crossed my mind in those ways. And it's also really difficult to track what influence permaculture has had in my life versus the many other, nature-based wisdom traditions that have influenced my life. So, I'll say this with humility, but I would say I found permaculture. I definitely was on a path of seeking knowledges and whatnot. In college, I spent a lot of time, looking for learning programs and deepening my connection with nature and culture. I first heard of permaculture when I was on a field study in Belize, actually, through the Sierra Institute at UC Santa Cruz. So I was in Belize, and we visited the Belize Agroforestry Research Center called BARC in the southern district of Toledo. And I was just amazed by their tropical, perennial polycultures, where they had mahogany and different overstory trees, and then cacao in the understory and different fruit trees. They grew chocolate for green and blacks, Maya Gold chocolate bars, which are delicious.
Mhm.
And I was just kind of blown away by this design science of how to create these thriving ecosystems, and this cacao cooperative that they had helped to get going. So it was both like social and economic, and also ecological. And then I did another field study with the Sierra Institute at UC Santa Cruz on ethnobotany, plants and people, learning about traditional ecological knowledge where I'm from in the Santa Cruz region. And then right after college, I took my first permaculture design course with Penny Livingston at Pie Ranch in 2004. And, the rest is history. So yeah, I was definitely seeking out who else was learning and teaching about these things, and found quite a bit. I'm always kind of blown away when I'm like, oh, no one's really doing this. And I go looking, it's like, oh, actually, there's a lot of people really doing this at quite an advanced scale and way. So, and then in terms of what influence it's had in my life, I mean, again, it's really hard to know, because agroecology, different spiritual traditions, there's been a lot that's kind of all come at once, and permaculture and agroecology and many of the other things that I study are all holisms, right? They're all like sort of design systems, if you will. So they're all kind of pointing at similar things, from using similar yet different language, and coming from similar yet different lineages. But one thing that's unique about permaculture is it's helpful for articulating things. Like, for example, I took a 5-day advanced course with Joanna Macy on her work around systems theory.
Mhm.
And we were getting really deep into the work of Gregory Bateson and all these other systems thinkers. And sometimes their language can be a little harder, a little longer, very accurate and very detailed, but also sometimes a little too much for my little brain here. So what I love about permaculture is it takes ecology and systems thinking and makes it really approachable. David Holmgren's book, for example, has these little icons and phrases for these different so-called permaculture principles, which are these, principles of ecology, and just makes them really catchy and approachable. So I'd say permaculture has influenced me in helping me become more articulate around these things that really matter to me. It's helped me, learn how to better live in reciprocity with people and with the more than human world, but also how to regenerate and heal.
Mm.
And then I'd say your question, though, is about embodiment, right? So that's more about the somatic level. And so through all of that, I'd say, by learning how to live a little bit lighter on the earth and to see that systems, when humans can be a force for good in the world, not just a virus, that we can help things heal quite quickly. That's really helped me on an embodied level around my sense of belonging, really. I would say I don't have to perform, like I don't have to do something, I don't have to be something, I don't have to have something. I just belong here. I'm a human being belonging to Earth, belonging to this community. And when I'm in right relationship, my life is helpful, it's
Yeah.
truly healing and positive.
Mm.
And in turn, that's helped me sort of with a sense of peace, I would say, inner peace, and also like fortitude, the ability to, to feel nourished in the face of all the stress and anxiety of what it is to be a human being at a time of so much death and destruction all around us.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a lot to unpack. I'm curious around what right livelihood means to you. And I don't know if this correlates at all. However, I'm also curious if you could expand on exactly what is systems thinking.
Those are connected. Right livelihood, is part of the noble path. So, the term right livelihood is mostly used in a Buddhist context. However, I came to it through, this will come up later, I think, in one of the future questions
One
that
of
I
the
know
future
you're going to
questions.
ask. But I studied at the Schumacher College in England, the E.F. Schumacher College. And it was there that I met Vandana Shiva, the Indian ecofeminist and food scholar and activist and dear friend. And when I met her, I learned that she received this prestigious award called the Right Livelihood Award. Since 1980, it's gone to 4 people or organizations globally who are working to demonstrate solutions, courageous solutions to the root causes of global problems. And so she received the award, and I started to really track who are these people that have won this award. These are my people. These are the people I want to be working with and supporting, because they've been able to implement things at scale. And a lot of the times when I talk to people about these earth and cultural solutions, they're like, "Oh, that's great in the backyard," or "That's great, in like some small country somewhere." But I'm like, "No, guys, these are actually happening globally and like for a long time, actually." So I started studying, these people and learning about the Right Livelihood Award. And to make a long story short, I then founded a partnership between my university where I work and I'm a student at UC Santa Cruz, and the Right Livelihood Foundation based in Stockholm. And that was in 2013. And so for the past 8 years, I've coordinated this partnership that links activists and academics. So that's what the Right Livelihood College is, which is the work I do at the university. But you're asking, what is right livelihood? And right
Yeah.
livelihood, I actually interviewed Vandana once to answer this question, because everyone asks. And I got 10 or 20 different laureates to comment on their definition. And she talked about ethical work. It's ethical work. It's to see your life force as something, as contributing to the solution, really. But she also pointed out that it's not wrong work. It's not wrong livelihood, that there are unethical livelihoods, sex trafficking, producing weapons, on and on like that. So it's sort of a values check to say, am I doing wrong livelihood? Do I need to not engage in destructive activities? Because when we all stop doing that, the earth is a better place.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's about aligning our ethics and our values with how we spend our time and how we earn our income, and how we make an adequately resourced life. I would say it also is tied with leaving it better than you found it, right? Libdify, leave it better than you found it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
What
So
was your second question?
the
Oh yeah,
second question
systems.
was, so you mentioned systems thinking, and I don't know if, it's a term that I hear used here and there, and I have my own definition of what that means. It's like, look at the whole system and think about how the entire thing works rather than one or two variables that you might pick out. So I'm just wondering, when you talk about systems thinking in the context of what you're talking about here, what do you mean by that?
I think you got it.
Okay,
A
good.
good working definition.
I just needed some clarification then. Make
Yeah,
sure everybody else understands it also, because
yeah. I mean, I guess I'll just juxtapose it and say that, for example, in the university system, we're pretty siloed. And I'd say in our society at large, there's a lot of fragmentation, and that
Mhm.
leads to hiding places, these little corners where not so good things can happen, both in our individual psyches, feeling fragmented between all the different roles we might play as individuals, but also how we organize groups and ultimately how we organize things like the global economy or global politics. I think it's pretty fragmented. So, even in the academy, we talk about divisions, academic divisions. It's like, no, we don't need divisions. We need unity. We need unifiers. We need to have,
Yeah.
some more universality in the university, if you will. Um, so yeah, it's like that Rilke poem around living our life in ever widening circles. It's just to think, what else? What about under that stone, and how is that interacting? It's about this web of relationships. How are things related? Are things growing? Are things dying? When I move that piece, what happens to this piece?
Right. I love that so much.
I think it's pretty popular nowadays. I feel like it's really grown a lot since the 60s and 70s through to this time. Um, the early work of Bateson, Joanna Macy, many other people, has been expanded upon tremendously. The cybernetics, right? The early work of Donna Haraway, um, early feminist scholar, also at UC Santa Cruz. Things have changed a lot since the internet and computers have come about. People are really thinking in networks quite
Yeah.
a bit. Organizational design has changed quite a bit as well.
Yeah. And I find that really interesting and actually really gratifying, because nature is a system, and you can't you can't take things out of her and expect her to work the same way. And you can't study just a couple of things and expect that the behavior. So that's really gratifying to me. I'm glad to hear that you've seen things change. I don't get to be in academia anymore, so
Yeah,
I don't know
well,
how things have shifted.
some things have in some programs and some things have not. Like, for example, there's this thought that the gold standard is, to develop a causal relationship with things. Take agricultural experiments, for example. You want to have a controlled research trial, and then you've got a site where you're doing something and a site that's the control, and then you compare
Right.
them and sort of prove causality. Well, good luck with that.
Right.
And furthermore, there's a sense of arrogance, I would say. Meg Wheatley wrote this great book, Walk Out, Walk On. She's, in the organizational development and leadership field. And she talks about the arrogance of scaling up. That scaling up presumes that when you discover something, well, first of all, you discover something, that's problematic in many cases. And then you can write the the sort of instructions for how it works and then give it to someone else, they could read those instructions and apply it in their context, and it's going to work like magic. Well, context is important. People say permaculturists are context junkies, and that's probably kind of true.
Yeah.
Um, if you move something into a different context, there's different relationships, different rainfall, different, whatever, different factors. So I prefer what she's calling scaling across, which really links with my work and passion around social movements, which are less hierarchical and more sort of distributed, if you will. So scaling across, saying, hey, here are our best practices and what worked for us, what works for you.
Yeah. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost want to keep on this line of conversation, and at the same time, I'm curious about question number 3.
Yes, door number 3.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned Penny Livingston. And when you and I met, like, I don't know how long ago that was now, but you were teaching through Regenerative Design Institute, which is Penny's school. And you established your own business, the Santa Cruz Permaculture, and you've been teaching through that. So all of you out there, I had taken 2 PDCs already, and I was saying to myself, I'm never taking another PDC. And then David offered this PDC, and I just had to go. I had to go. He had all these things that I just really had to come experience. But what I'd like to hear is what inspired you, what was your passion, your desire to step out on your own and basically be in charge of how the container of the permaculture design course looked.
First of all, I love how often Penny's coming up right now. So
Penny.
If she's listening in, or we can get her here sometime. Yeah, thanks for asking. This is a kind of a rich personal story that I don't get to tell too much. But when I was 10, I would walk to school, and I'd walk over this hill, and this hill had mustard in the spring that was flowering. There were bees on those flowers, and they would crawl all over me. And I was this thick glasses little 10-year-old with a big heavy backpack walking over to school. And slowly but surely, the hill really, really grabbed me. It really, shook me, and I would just go up there and play every day. It was my fort. And once I took my grandfather up there, and he was a professor, and I was like, look out at, grandfather, check it out. There's the Hollywood sign and Catalina Island, and you can see, the whole LA basin. He was like, that's cool. That was sort of the mantra, if you will, that I was getting, or the story I was getting from my family and my upbringing. Like, check out how cool it is. Kind of like going up the ladder and going up the hill, if you will, to this new house. But he said, that's cool. What about these rocks? What about these birds? Do you know about these plants? And I realized I didn't really know that much about this place. And so I was inspired to learn more about nature right then. And I hope, we can all think of someone younger in our life that we can help just have that experience, because most of society is saying, don't go outside. In fact, there's a lot of scary things and dirty things out there. It's nice and comfortable in here. And furthermore, there's all these things that you can get addicted to inside. So, I got addicted to vitamin N, nature. And then, many years later, I found myself in college at Santa Cruz, and I was developing my sort of social and political identity. And I was reading things like Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Teaching to Transgress by Bell Hooks, Small is Beautiful by E.F. Schumacher, in which he said, education is the world's most renewable resource. Education and creativity is the world's most renewable resource. And it really shook me. And I started looking back at the stepping stones in my life and realizing that my mom was a teacher, my grandfather was a professor. There's these sort of stepping stones. And I started thinking, maybe I'm going to be an educator. And then I looked at my dad, and he's a healer, he's a doctor, and two of my sisters are doctors as well. And I was like, education and healing, very interesting. What might I do? Not that I need to follow in their footsteps, but just collecting data. And to make a long story short, the way it evolved is I just thought of myself as having one foot firmly rooted in an institution so that I could leverage the power and the sort of resources that an institution can have, but then also one foot not in an institution that can be a little more nimble and agile. And so I started down the path of teaching. I just really have enjoyed teaching, and I got a lot of positive feedback early on when I would, speak and organize groups to, do social change basically. Because I see education as social change. Back to pedagogy oppressed and the work of Paulo Freire, it's about, education to transform. So, the way it sort of emerged is that I would be 50-50 like that. And here I am, many years later, 50%, 50%, pretty much, I'm doing both of these things. So I spent a lot of time throughout my 20s in particular, collaborating with these amazing organizations, thinking that might be the outside of the university partner, right? I already had UC Santa Cruz as a partner, teaching there for many years and being involved there. But I was like, what's this other non-university work going to be? And so I worked for, who was first? Gosh, I worked at the Center for Agroecology and Sustainable Food Systems, and then Gaia University. I started to teach there, and then I collaborated with Penny and James at RDI to start a Gaia University Center there, and I started teaching the class that you took, the permaculture class, through the Regenerative Design Institute. I ended up working for many years with John Young at the H. Shields Institute, collaborating with the World Cafe and being on the board of directors of the World Cafe global community. But eventually, the time came and I said, guys, I think what I'm doing, I've loved working with you, and I'm happy to say I'm friends and colleagues with all of these people still. And I'm really grateful for that. Love them dearly. But I started to say, I think what I'm trying to do is a little bit different. It's something I'm seeing and feeling that needs to be done. I guess it's mine to do. And so I started in 2016 offering courses at Santa Cruz Permaculture. I actually launched it on Valentine's Day of 2016 to remember, it's a way of infusing the world with my love and my soul.
Yeah.
And the universe has showed up to support it. It's been like a spark and tinder the whole time. And I did it, because there was changes to the curriculum that I wanted to bring forward. And also I just wanted to do something locally in Santa Cruz. And furthermore, I'll say, it's nice, a socially responsible and ecologically responsible business and being an entrepreneur allows for a sense of agility and nimbleness, which is really refreshing, especially with my other work, which is so there's so many decision makers, and it sometimes can get bureaucratic to a fault. Generally not. At the university, I work with pretty amazing people, and we try to not add in too much bureaucracy, but it's nice to have something a little more nimble like Santa Cruz Permaculture.
Yeah. And I would just like to clarify here for everybody that this is Santa Cruz, California, and we mentioned UCSC. That's the University of California at Santa Cruz. I just wanted to clarify that because I've got other people from around the world, and when we talk about the UC system or Santa Cruz, not everybody knows, Santa Cruz.
Thank you.
Be anywhere.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
I forget to not use acronyms.
Yeah, I did the same thing when I went through it. So I thought I would just clarify that here. And that was a really great story. And it totally leads into the thing that I want to ask you next, which is, what do you think it is about your design course that is unique? Because you said you wanted to do your own thing, you had your own thing, wanted to present a permaculture design course in a different way than you had been doing it as participating with others. And I just would love to hear what is the Davidness that is in your PDC?
Well, I think asking the alumni would be an interesting reflection. But the first thing I just want to underscore is what you said, that each course is unique.
Yeah.
Right. And there's no like this course is better than that course. It's
Right.
just they're different. They're in different contexts with different teachers. And so I appreciate you said unique, not necessarily better or worse.
Right.
I always recommend people take multiple permaculture design courses, especially in different climates. So you can see how people, embody the principles and practices. And I guess, the second thing I would say is that we have many courses now. That's part of what makes it unique, is that it's part of an ecology of courses. There's not just the permaculture design course, but the advanced course in food forests, the advanced permaculture design course, the garden herbalism stuff. We've got an online, call series. We've got the work that reconnects. I'm looking to now start a 6-month farm-based apprenticeship program. So that I think is different to feel like it's part of something that's, like an institute. And there are other places that have that. I guess another unique thing is just where we are in Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
Santa Cruz is a beautiful place. We've got the Monterey Bay Marine Sanctuary. We've got the Santa Cruz Mountains, the Redwood Forest. It's just a really unique place. So there are people who come from afar because they just want to be in Santa Cruz and in California. But then also, people from more urban areas who come here because they want to get away. It's a beautiful place. But I think your question is more, about the nuances of what I've changed with the course. And I will say, a lot of the course is still based on what I was mentored in. So I did a 2-week intensive with Penny Livingston Stark in 2004, and a lot of what I do is still based in that. And then I co-taught with Penny and Lydia Nielsen for many years, and a lot of what I do is still similar to that. But people tell me, when I read the evaluations, some things that really stand out is how practical the course is. Like, for example, I like to expose people to farms that have, that are working well. And then we think about how we can scale the best practices from the farm to whatever scale people are working at. So some people go out and start their own farms. But a lot of people, most people I would say, are working more at a home or community scale. And so we think about how to scale it down without losing the integrity and what works about the system. Like a worm bin, for example. There's all these worm bins that you can buy, and some of them are great, some of them are not so great. And we can end up spending a lot of time and wasting a lot of plastic and stuff to buy these off-the-shelf solutions. But when we can go and see how people are doing it, where their livelihoods are depending on it, and they've figured out how to, optimize the system and then scale that to a home scale, we can learn a lot and have really elegant systems. So I like to keep it practical to provide immediate value for people. And I'm not sure if that's unique to our course versus others. I can't really compare, but people definitely comment on how that's something that we excel at. And I'd say another major point, and you've commented on this, we've kind of geeked out, is just community.
Yeah.
I'm a community builder. I come from a large family. I dedicate a lot of time to peer-to-peer learning, to trying not only to expose people to nature as the teacher, but also to expose people to the wisdom of the group, because obviously we know more collectively than any of us individually do. So, gratitude circles in the morning, a lot of time for forming friendships and sharing meals together. And then introducing the students to a lot of different teachers and places, so that, again, I'm not like, let's talk about community, but rather doing community, having community. So I could teach the whole course myself, but that would not meet my goal, as well as having other guest instructors come in to teach subjects that they're really lit up about, so that when the course ends, the students have a network of people to call upon. Then also field trips, just tons of field trips, which again is part of why I wanted to, really offer the course here locally, instead of teaching it through other people's agencies, so that I could really develop and grow, you know, the teaching base, the wisdom base, and, you know, invest in my community, essentially. So, and then the last thing I guess I'll say on this community piece is around the alumni. I'm a Deadhead, and I really love the music of the Grateful Dead, but also I read this book about their sort of strategies, and they talked about how they would invest in their fans. You know, when tickets would go on sale, they'd let their fans have access to them before they just go on the open market. The fans could like bootleg and record and trade tapes and stuff like that. And I think that's smart. I think it's good to really invest in those people who have shown up. And so once people graduate, I'm always like, how are you doing? What else could support you in taking the next steps? Are there advanced courses we should be offering? You know, what was missing? How can we grow? Who was not here that should have been here? You know, all those sorts of questions have really helped me co-evolve this with people, and I'm really excited for the future. I'm really zeroing in on this piece quite a bit right now to think about deeper, more advanced trainings, because I've done a few. Like we had this 8-day advanced course this summer. It was like water. It was so great.
I so wanted to click the button on that.
Well, come on up. We're going to do it again next summer. But there's going to be other things too.
Yeah, next summer would probably be way better timing for me. This summer, not so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll be doing some button clicking next summer.
Come on up.
That's awesome. But and I miss the connection that you create when you're there. And for me, that definitely was the uniqueness to your PDC. I mean, I experienced connection in all of them, and yours actually really fostered it and created space for it. And we got to explore it in those work that reconnects exercises, and I really loved that. So
cool.
There's my alumni answer.
Yeah, I was going to ask, but then you went there. So thank you.
Yeah, that's my alumni answer. I loved that. And I acknowledge that the practical part of it too. I remember all of those different places that we went, and I can see that also being something that's a little different from the other 2 PDCs that I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to riff on that a little more, because so I read the evals, and I can remember when I did my PDC, I was like, 22 or something. And I thought, we need more hands-on, we need to get out more. There's all this theory. And I actually at first was like, this permaculture stuff is just people just talking the whole time. Let's get out and do it. And so I got into farming and agroecology and stuff. And I got that itch, scratched. And then I went back to permaculture, and I realized, oh, no, it is really helpful to have such solid design skills and to see the component parts and how they fit together. And I should not blame permaculture for that, but rather to see an opportunity for the delivery system of permaculture to be different, not to, throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, but to transcend and include the 2-week intensive course, or how we offer it 1 week in a month for 6 months. And so that's why I'm really focused on offering internships and apprenticeships and other nature connection opportunities, because we need to go deeper. We call it dirt time, right? We need more practical time. And so the PDC curriculum as it's offered is really not geared for that. We put as many field trips and as much hands-on stuff as we can, and it works and it feels great. And yes to that. But at the end of the day, it's usually 12 days of curriculum. Even if the whole time was all hands-on, it's still not going to be enough. It wouldn't have been enough for me in my adolescence for what I needed. And so, it's sort of a call to the movement and to myself to create more opportunities for people to just like drop in and live it. For me, that the first major experience was my field study in Belize, and then my field study with ethnobotany. I did a field study in permaculture, and then I ended up doing the UCSC Farm and Garden Apprenticeship Program for like 3 years, where I lived on the farm and really got steeped into that. And so, if you're on the trajectory towards being a permaculture teacher or designer or whatever, even if it doesn't use the P word, and you're getting in there, we've got to have that dirt time. We have to speak. Brock Dolman, the permaculture teacher from Occidental Arts and Ecology Center, says we need to be able to use the pronoun I. When I went out and did this, this is what I observed, not just in a book somewhere it said this thing.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And you have spent a lot of time with nature doing that. I did this in nature. I got to see this in nature kind of thing, which is a great segue for me to ask you, what is the biggest thing you have learned from nature?
That is an impossible question.
I know.
The biggest thing, but I like it. I ask questions like that too. What's the best or biggest? And you're like, well, thanks for asking for me to go there, and it brings up things, but there's no one singular thing. But what immediately jumps out for me is ecology and ecosophy. So ecology, right? Oikos, logos, the knowledge of nature. So some of the biggest things I've learned with and from nature are, succession, feedback loops, bird language, herbalism, like edibles, just, to be connected and to understand how this works, and to feel a part of it, is really probably the first thing. Just knowledge. Like, I feel empowered with knowledge. This is how this works. I'm not a stranger. And that was the original root of how I got into this. I just woke up one day and was like, I don't know what the heck is going on here. And this whole part of society is not interested in teaching me. They don't know. These bozos over here, they don't know. They can't walk outside and know anything about, where our water comes from, where it goes. When we flush the toilet, things go away. Where is away? I go to away, and I'm like, well, that's a terrible way to deal with our crap. Like, go to the landfill, go to the wastewater treatment. That sucks. And then you start seeing all these other ways people do it around the world. You're like, that's a lot better. That's causing less death and destruction. So that was the first. That's how I got into studying social movements and the economy and all that stuff. Just how does the world work? But then Sophia, right, is the goddess of wisdom. So ecosophy, oikos Sophia, or philosophy, right? So ecosophy is about the wisdom of nature, and that's more subtle, I would say. I mean, there's a field, ecosophy, which I'm not qualified to speak about, but just the linguistics of it, I think, are compelling. To think about the wisdom of nature and learning the knowledge and the facts and how it operates is one thing, but to kind of drop in again to that somatic place we were talking about earlier, that's rich. And so I think about the Haudenosaunee, right? The people of the Longhouse, Native American community, tribal peoples, the Mohawk, the Oneida, the Onondaga, the Seneca, the Cayuga, the Tuscarora, and that teaching around 7 generations, to think about like tree time. Joanna Macy talks about this as deep time, to think about like 100,000 years, that sort of time frame. Where are we? What trajectories are we on? How do systems work over that larger time or that larger space continuum, right? Geography is the study of time and space. So thinking about human societies and the earth in a wider frame, again, helps me feel a sense of peace and a little bit of acceptance for where things are, and to know that, this earth wants to heal, and there's things that we can do to create ecologies that I personally prefer. I personally prefer to be in a place where the hydrologic cycle is functioning in a little bit wetter way. than we have right now, where
And there are ways.
there
There
are
are
ways. They're
do that.
really simple. That's like one of the most empowering things.
Yeah.
Just go out and, to build brush gabion check dams in riparian corridors and to play beaver, basically, and then to come back year after year and be like, it's wetter. It is definitely wetter here now.
Yeah.
And that's empowering and exciting. And join the story. I think that I deeply believe that the people who tell the story that the most people believe drives the culture. And so there's a story around humans as a virus. There's a story around technology is going to solve all of our problems. And, there can be appropriate technologies that can solve some problems, but sometimes we're solving the wrong problems. And sometimes we're not solving those problems at all. We're not getting to the root of them. So I think there's a growing story that many movements, including permaculture, are a part of, which is the "we're going to make it" story.
Yeah.
It's the story of, it might be hard and we might lose a lot of things in this next time, but we're going to make it, and we're going to work together to do that. And here's how.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then correct me if I'm wrong here, but just to condense this down in simplistic terms of that answer that you gave, what I'm
Mhm.
hearing is that what you learned from nature is to listen, observe, connect, ponder, and create. That's what I heard in your answer. Does that resonate?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I would also love to add, on what you said, this is just coming from me about problems, the problems that we've created, and we're looking for solutions in the wrong way, and maybe looking for machines to fix things. And I know that if we will listen to nature and observe nature and ponder with nature and create the way nature creates, then we get to solve problems because there's already a solution. It's just a lack of awareness of how the earth is doing things that actually is keeping us living in our own filth, basically.
That's a big one. I mean, we should also talk about the problem with solutions. Right? Solutionism
Yeah.
is problematic. And so, there are false solutions. That's one thing where you look at something like, oh my God, this is so cool. And then you peel it back a little bit more and you're like, oh, that's not actually changing things.
Yeah.
Like I heard about this recycling program where instead of giving your recycling to the city or county municipal system where they take it and they sort it, and then the city or county makes some money to support their program, it is a program where they come and collect your stuff and then recycle it and get money and then use that money for some other purpose, probably a well-to-do purpose, but I don't really know if that presents much of a solution because it's weakening government. It's weakening our governance structure, which we really need. If you think about it, government's not going away. And furthermore, we are government. Government is a commons.
Mhm.
So let's make that work for us. So there's many, many stories I could tell about false solutions. And then just, the solutionism of savior complex is there. Going too fast is there, forgetting to think intersectionally, putting on the lenses like the decolonial lenses and saying, okay, this solution here, if I put on a decolonial frame, what is and is not happening? Who is and is not benefiting? Who's benefiting the most from this? Who's making decisions? Who's not making decisions? Who owns what? And then take those lenses off, put on the feminist lenses. Okay, how are women involved in this? How aren't women involved in this? Who's owning what? Who's deciding what? Taking those lenses off, putting on the queer lenses, being like, all right, how's gender coming in here? What about non-binary peoples? So yeah, solutionism is a problem as well. And permaculture, I have many critiques of permaculture. One of them is that it can border on solutionism quite a bit. So I think maybe that's another thing that students in my classes appreciate is that I I don't hold it up on a pedestal like it's perfect, but rather see it as what it is and is not.
And there are a lot of different ways to look at something, which is what I think what you're saying right there by changing out all of the glasses. And I love the where this came from. You probably know. What we could be looking for is, instead of solutions for trying, looking to see what each of these sections of people's, what their solutions might be, but how do we create a fair and just society for everybody?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I want.
me too. I feel like we covered everything that I wanted to cover in all of that. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, just peace on earth. I'll add a dose of peace for everyone.
That's
Health and
perfect.
happiness.
That's perfect. Thank you so much
Thank
for being
you.
here, David. And would you just verbally tell our audience how they can connect with you, and just know that this is also going to be in everybody's email, so they'll be able to click on a link. But if they're
Yeah,
listening, they just
absolutely.
can't wait to contact you, what would they need to do?
Email is great. info.santacruzpermaculture@gmail.com. And then our website is santacruzpermaculture.com. That's the best.
Excellent. This was really amazing. You're so deep and rich and articulate, and I just really appreciated hearing more of your story that I didn't know. So thank you so much, David.
Thanks, friend.
You're welcome.
Enjoyed it.
Me too.